Joining us with us. Srini, are we ready?
Yes, you go ahead.
Srinivas, are you ready? Are we ready?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Namaste, hello, and welcome to the digital world and the Lead America Small Business Leadership webinar. We sincerely thank you very much for joining us today. We also thank the community for embracing and working with us over the years. I am Siri Kompali, the Vice President of the Lead America organization, an all-volunteer team working together with as the United National Diversity Coalition of America that showcases unity in diversity and inclusion. I am proud to engage with our all-volunteer team to champion youth to lead. That is, leadership, education, advocacy, and diversity. You can learn more about us at ileadamerica.org and always reach us by writing to info@ileadamerica.org. Lead America Inc. is an established and reputed 501c3 nonprofit organization that is led by a team of volunteers who are proactive in hosting business networking, family wellness, and mental health services. We welcome you to join, share, and engage with us and serve the mainstream community together. Our only commitment is to do the larger good to the community by contributing our time, talents, and treasure. Please feel free to reach me or message me your inquiries as we continue the meeting. And we are eagerly working and welcome a healthy discussion today. I would like to share more about Lead America organization, the LAF Community Advocacy and Leadership. LAF's goal is to demystify, decode advocacy by equipping society with knowledge and tools. We help communities to become assertive, to pursue and promote active engagement in a progression by giving the confidence to advocate effectively. Part of the LAF role is innovation, is to provide the space for leadership to provide and test their ideas. And in returns, or that sometimes there are not just leaders, but entire programs with a great team evaluating the impacts of expanding the use of the community-based alternatives to society participation. We are also mobilizing public and clinical health practitioners to join in this great cause. Human and social justice advocacy has been defined as a systematized efforts aiming at influencing public alternatives, policies, and laws to create a more socially just society guided by the vision of human rights that may include awareness of socio-economic equities, protection of social rights, as well as human identity, experience of oppression, and spirituality. As a community institution, LAF will support our society of students, parents, and any individual for social change and human rights consistent. Most of us who are volunteering are IT professionals and tech entrepreneurs in this LIF. And now, let me take honors to introduce the chairman of Lead America organization, Dr. Sushil Jain. Dr. Sushil Jain is a retired U.S. Armed Forces naval officer who served as a commanding officer for the Washington Navy Yard Hospital and director of medicine at Naval Hospital Bethesda. Also served as an eye care consultant to the White House and the U.S. Capitol, where he cared for nation's leaders, including the past 3 presidents, vice presidents, and their families too. Dr. Jain received several civilian and military honors, includes the highest awards, known as Meritorious Service Medal and Legion of Merit from President Bill Clinton and President George W. Bush for exemplary outstanding military services. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your services. He retired from US Navy in 2003. Dr. Jain's superior leadership and management skills have resulted in many accomplishments. He was instrumental in passing Public Law 5202, that is, Vegetarian School Lunch Program, a program designed to provide plant-based meals options to all school children. He organized multiple legislative conferences on Capitol Hill to promote peace, nonviolence, live health, and live subjects. Dr. Jain was instrumental in President Obama celebrating Diwali annually. In cooperation with PCRM, he actively lobbied to protect the animals from being used for surgical training by the Department of Defense. This initiative also demands to build sanctuaries funded by the federal government for retired animals after being used for research. Dr. Jain's compassionate nature is evidenced for conducting over multiple global medical camps in India, Central America, and Haiti. He is currently in private practice and associate professor for Uniformed University Medical School. His wife, Asha, is a dietitian and diabetic educator for Walter Reed National Medical Center. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and please welcome Dr. Sushil Jain, Chairman of Lead America Organization.
Thank you, Siri. It is indeed a pleasure to see everyone here on live on the teleconference and hundreds of you watching on your home TV and YouTubes and other social media. I really want to thank Srini Garikapati for our technical assistance in setting everything up, and Rajesh Gutti for being a moderator and organizing the whole event. So all three of you are a wonderful team, and I really appreciate it. And without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce one of the leading and a very proactive gentleman from our own community. And the gentleman that it's my pleasure today is to introduce Delegate Mark Keam, who is a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, representing over 85,000 residents living in the neighborhood of McLean, Tysons, Dunloring, town of Vienna, Oakton, Penderbrook, Fair Oaks, and surrounding area. 2009, Delegate Keam was the first Asian-born immigrant and the first Korean American elected to any state-level office in Virginia. Over the past decade, Mark has authored dozens of state laws that impacted the quality of life for Virginians, such as improving public education, healthcare, creating innovation, technical sector jobs, environmental jobs, supporting military and veterans and public safety, reforming tax codes for the state of Virginia and business rules and regulations, and providing many, many more government transparencies. He's a firm believer in open communication, bilateral communication, holding the government accountable for its work as well as for efficiency. Currently, Delegate Keam serves as the Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee and Chairman of the Higher Education Subcommittee, as well as the Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resource Committee. Professionally, Delegate Keam has 3 decades of experiences in both the private and public sector. As a member of the Bar Association for 2 states, he has practiced law in executive and legislative branches of federal and local government. Mark was born in Korea, lived in Vietnam with his parents in Australia before moving to America as a teenager. He received his law degree, political science degree from University of California, Irvine, and law degree from Hastings College of Law. Delegate Keam, thank you very much for joining us, and we are honored to have you spend this evening with us. And please thank your family in advance for allowing us to spare some time with us.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jain. It is an honor for me to be with you tonight, and for all of your organization's members and friends who are signing on from wherever they may be, calling in and watching our conversation. Thank you for this opportunity. I also want to thank Siri for that wonderful introduction, not only in terms of capturing what we're going to do tonight in terms of our conversation, but where we are as a moment, and especially for our friends in the South Asian community, many of our Indian American and others who are tuning in. It's been an interesting last few days, let alone a few years in America. So we can talk a little bit about this moment in time. And Srini as well, thank you. And NRI Stream. This is the first time I'm using this platform, but already I like it a lot because it's very clear. I can see everybody. The sound quality is great. And you certainly know how to find the right platform for doing this. It is a real honor for me to join you for a number of reasons, the least of which is that I have the honor of representing Dr. Jain and his family in the General Assembly, and working with many of you. I was able to serve in this capacity for the last 10, 11 years. And so it's been a privilege of mine to step up and serve in public office in America as an immigrant myself, as you just alluded to, having been born in Asia and then coming here as a teenager and learning about America from the ground up, and just getting involved and now being able to do something a little bit more significant than just watching from the sideline gives me hope that this concept of what we call the American dream is in fact alive and well. But the American dream is not something that we should take for granted. Just because some of us are lucky enough to live that life and achieve that doesn't mean that it's easily accessible to everybody. There are many, many people like you and I who are out there who deserve all the opportunities that I've been blessed to have in my life in this country, and yet they are not able to have for a lot of reasons, many of which includes discrimination, hurdles and obstacles that are in the way, legal problems, if not, not necessarily legal by law, but the way people tend to assume things about you based on how you look and where you come from. So there are all these obstacles in America that limit our ability to be as successful as we would like to be and have the opportunities that we'd like. And so that's why I think it's really important that any one of us, whether we're in government or private sector, young or old, whatever your ethnic background might be, whatever your particular background is and your particular story might be, it's really incumbent for every one of us to step up, participate, and find ways to contribute and to give back so that we make this American dream alive for everybody. I want to start with that because at this conversation that we're going to have, we can talk about COVID, what's going on with COVID, and how it's obviously impacting every one of our lives in so many different ways, and how it's been a very, very tough 5 months for all of us, and that we're not going to have anything easy solution anytime real soon. So that's clearly something that we should be realistic about. So we can talk about that. We can also talk about what we're going to be doing in this special session next week when the General Assembly, your state government, state legislators will be convening again in Richmond to start a conversation about how we fix some of the laws, how we put some money into the resources that we need to combat the COVID crisis. We can also talk about some of the other issues that we'll be dealing with in the General Assembly when we go into special session next week, including some of the racial inequalities that we've seen over the last at least in the last few months. We've seen a lot more close up because Mr. George Floyd's murder on TV has led to an awakening of the racial inequalities and also the unfairness that this criminal justice system that we have today is not leading to the kind of results that we deserve in America. So we can talk about that. But let me start before we get into those conversations. And certainly I'm happy to take any and all questions that come from anybody or comments that I'd love to hear. But before we get into that, let's pause for just a second and reflect on some of the positive sides of where we are today, because we can talk about the negative and some of the dark concerns that we have. But one of the most exciting things for me, as somebody who's been involved in politics in America for a while, and who, as a member of the Democratic Party, both here in Virginia and across the country, who's worked really hard over the last 30 odd years to try and have more people that look like you and I be part of American mainstream, be part of our conversation, to hold high office, to be able to have influence and to make a difference in our lives by changing the laws. For us, we've always wanted to see more people that look like us step up and serve and be successful. And this week, we had some very good news in that Senator Kamala Harris, of course, from California, was named by Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee for president to serve as his running mate. Not only is it historic because of the fact that it's the first woman of an ethnic background who's been asked to serve on the ticket, not only because she happens to be a person of color, not only because she brings such an amazing set of skills and exciting qualifications. But because of the fact that her mother is of Indian ancestry, her father is of Jamaican ancestry, and because she grew up in California and established her professional career in San Francisco, in a city that outside of Hawaii has the most percentage of Asians and Pacific Islanders that live together, in a state that has the most Asians and Pacific Islanders living together outside of Hawaii, that to me sends a very, very strong message to the rest of our country and to the rest of the world that what I alluded to earlier about the American dream is in fact possible. And it's not just about having people that look like us in offices, but that there are great people out there who deserve to be in every leadership role in America, not just in government, not just in military like Captain Jane has served, but in business and in academics and in Hollywood and in journalism and finance and law, you name it. Every aspect of American life should be full of really high qualified people like you and I doing everything that other Americans are doing in a way that we finally can say, we are part of America, that we own a part of America, that we are leading part of America. And the only way that happens is for people who've had the chance to get into those jobs to not forget that they may be the first, but they should not be the last. And so once you're in those jobs, you got to find every opportunity to bring more people into that role. Find young people in particular, those that haven't had the opportunity, to reach out to them, affirmatively go out of your way to say, hey, how can I help you do the kind of work that you want to do? How can I introduce you to some people? How do I give you some skills and experiences that will open more opportunities for you? So the idea of leadership and American form of success in leadership is not just an academic concept. It's not just a hypothetical. It is a real practice with an art and a science behind it that you and I can perfect if we work at it together. So let's start with the idea that this week was not only historic for Indian Americans in particular, but all of us who trace our heritage to another country outside of America. And whatever happens in 3 months, and again, this is not a partisan conversation, it's not a political conversation. So I'm not saying whether one party or the other is going to win, but if, for example, if Ms. Kamala Harris ends up being our vice president, it'll send not only an important message to the rest of the world, but I think it'll give people like you and I a lot more opportunities to have access to high levels of government at the federal and state and local levels. So I think, at least for now, we should pause and celebrate that accomplishment at the national level. So let me turn a little bit more closer to Virginia and what's going on here. And Dr. Jane and I have had these conversations a couple of times over the last few weeks about how we are coping with what's going on with the health pandemic, which of course is no longer just a healthcare issue. I mean, as much as we'd all like to solve the healthcare problem, if it was just nothing but a healthcare problem, it's an infectious disease, a virus that's spreading. All we would need to do is have a whole bunch of really smart doctors, medical professionals like Dr. Jane and others who are experts in this, have them all go in the room, figure out what the solution is, what's the treatment, what's the vaccine, how do we treat those that are injured and harming, and how do we prevent others, and then have the doctors come out and tell us, okay, this is exactly what you need to do. Follow my rules, follow my prescription. If you follow this, we'll all be fine. If that's all it was, if there was just a healthcare problem, we'd have some healthcare professionals that give us the solutions, and then we would just follow. That would be the ideal. Unfortunately, it's not just a healthcare problem. It is a problem that started out as a healthcare problem, but it was spreading quickly because, especially in America, but in some other parts of the world, people didn't take it seriously. So there's this lack of trust in science and lack of trust in expertise in America in particular that's been eroding for many, many years. In America, there's a sense that it's not cool to be smart. It's not cool to be an intellectual. It's not cool to be an expert. It's better to just be kind of an average person that doesn't have those skills. And so there's been a little bit of that dumbing down of our nation, if you will, where when somebody who's an expert says something, they're like, I don't care what they say. I'm going to do what I think is right. And the idea that facts and evidence and data and scientific proof is not that important to most Americans part of this tribe, in which case I'm part of this. New ideas and facts and evidence, we have now created this healthcare crisis, turned it into a social crisis. And by having this social crisis, it led to a lot of people feeling nervous about going out and doing things. And when you go to a job and your coworker is infected, and all of a sudden everybody's infected, and some people say, well, you still have to come to work anyway, and don't wear a mask, don't wash your hands, because that's not that big of a deal. All of a sudden you see these community spreads happening in hotspots, whether it's in a factory or at a job site or at school or in a hospital or in a healthcare facility. Now we've got groups of people that are being infected in a way where it's affecting the economy. So the government comes in and says, now we have to stop all these businesses, shut down, force everybody to stay home. So we went from a healthcare crisis to a social, psychological crisis that says this is a bunch of Chinese doing something in China. It doesn't affect Americans. We don't believe in this. And then we had the president of the United States saying, there's only one person in America that we're going to get rid of this. It's not going to spread. And then when you had a ship full of people coming from overseas on a cruise, they said, don't let that ship come to America, because all of a sudden we're going to have more numbers. I don't want to see more numbers. Instead of trying to treat them, they said, don't let them come to this country. And so we've taken these wrong approaches to trying to stop this. And now we've come to a point where we have a healthcare, social, and an economic crisis. That's what we're facing today. That's the reality. So how do we try to get away from this and come back to some sense of normal? That's the real question for us. And for your state government in Virginia, for those of you who live and work in this area, you should know that starting next Tuesday, August 18th, members of the General Assembly like me and others are going to be coming to Richmond. We're going to meet again for the first time in about 4 months, and we're going to start a convention, a conference, a session where we will consider 3 different categories of issues that we will address this year. One will be dealing with the budget itself, because we have a state budget that pays for all of our needs. The budget that we passed in March is no longer workable because we've had 5 months of crises, lack of tax revenue coming in, a lot of extra spending, things like the personal protective equipment and other things that we have to make sure our healthcare workers have. So we now need to spend money on things that we didn't think about before, and we have to take money away from things that we don't need to be spending it on. So we need to readjust the budget. That's the first bucket of things that we're going to be doing. Second thing is we're going to deal with issues that deal with COVID. How do we respond to COVID? For example, if somebody has been unemployed now for a few weeks and their unemployment insurance is running out, Congress did their part earlier on, and they gave us some money to supplement our unemployment pay. But that $600 extra is gone now as of July 25th, and Congress hasn't acted since then. So what do we do about those people that can't afford to stay at home? Maybe they might get kicked out of their home. Maybe they might lose their energy or electricity, but they don't have a job to go back to because the company that they work for is laid off, or maybe the business is under. So in that crisis that we have with economic downturn and the unemployment and the evictions that are going on in homes and apartments, how do we make sure that the state can fund those people and provide them with relief? So those types of issues that we have to deal with from a legal perspective, we've got to pass those bills. So that's the second category. So you got the first is pure budget. Second is budget plus some of the laws and the legal changes that we have to make. And then the third area are things that, frankly, 6 months ago, we weren't even thinking about that much. I mean, even though we thought about it, we didn't think that there was a sense of urgency. And it's also an issue that, even though it's not directly related to COVID, it has become even more accentuated because of the COVID crisis. I'm talking about the issue of racial inequality in America and the idea that our law enforcement and the criminal justice system is not working to be fair and just for every American. We all know from having watched the news over the last few weeks, we've had some atrocious and very tragic circumstances involving Black Americans, African Americans, especially African American men who've been assaulted by police. Many of them have lost their lives, including tragically George Floyd and others that we've seen with our own eyes. The fact that somebody in government job with a uniform on was able to take a man's life in cold blood. And then we find out that that's not the only time that a person like that was murdered. They just didn't have a camera to witness it. We've had thousands and thousands of African-American men and women as well whose lives were cut short or who were arrested and thrown into jail without due process of law, because we've created this system for the last 400 years where America sees Black and brown people in particular, but new Americans and immigrants like many of us, as people that are not fully American. And by that, the law and the way we've implemented our system in America has made it clear that even if the laws and the Constitution requires equal, fair justice, the way it's implemented is very far from the truth, very far from our goals. And so we've created a very unfair and unequal and inequitable system that we have, especially in criminal law and in the justice system. So how do we fix that so that we save one more innocent African-American man from being murdered on the streets? How do we ensure it so that even people like you and I, who we may not be African-American, we may not have our ancestry or our descendants of slaves, and yet because we're not blonde, blue-eyed, Caucasian, European Americans, we may not be treated the same way as our white counterparts are. How do we create a system that allows every part of our government to treat everybody equally without regard to race, gender, or religion, or anything else that generally tends to divide us? So those are going to be our challenges. And starting next week, for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I'm going to be in Richmond, and many of us will be working virtually as well to address. So maybe I'll just stop there, because I mean, I can talk for hours. You don't want me to talk for hours. But let me stop there for a little bit, get some questions from you, answer some questions, hear some comments, and then let's see how the conversation goes.
So thank you. We have quite a few questions, and Siri has been tabulating those, and I'd like to turn it over to Siri to ask some of the, I know you got lots of questions, Siri, but if you can ask some that are very, very relevant to our conference and something that we can do here in our conference. So Siri, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Jain. And thank you, Honorable Delegate Mark Keam. You have addressed different sectors, different issues right now currently going on with COVID. I really appreciate you cover many areas. And one of the few areas which we, for personally, I'm a small business owner, and I run an IT company too. So before COVID, everything's were good. But after COVID has not only me, there are many people in our community going through different issues. First, me and my daughter, we love to go to Fair Oaks Mall, and it was always bright and all the time it was lively. But right now, the situation is not the same. It's different. Of course, we all got affected with COVID, and we are living with COVID right now. Until we get the vaccine, we have to go through this. And definitely government is supporting, and the federal government as well as the community leaders and community services leaders, everybody is supporting, and even the people are working hard to get back to their jobs, and unemployment benefits and whatnot, everything has been changed now. So we have few questions which came under through students and through audience too. So let me start asking few. The first one was COVID-19. You are aware this question will come in surely. So are there small business and non-profit relief grant funds? When will Fairfax open up the grant? Please share info so our business community who are facing incredible challenges can expect to gain from the help of our state. And can
yeah, sure. First
of
all, thank you for sharing your story, Siri, and I'm sorry that your business is being impacted, and all of our friends, those that are business owners as well as those working, it certainly affected everybody's business in some way or another. And I don't think it's going to be easy for us to turn a switch and bring everything back to normal again. So it'll be a while before we get back to some sense of regular life again. As for the specific programs that are subsidizing and or providing grants to businesses, currently there's one that we all know about from the federal government, which is called the PPP, Paycheck Protection Act program. That money has already dried up. That they gave out a lot of money up front. That's been gone already. In fact, I talked to a bank yesterday, United Bank here in Vienna, where I happen to bank. The manager of the bank told me that they, within the first month or so, they exhausted every penny because there's so many applications that came in. It took them a while to process everything, but now it's all gone, and they're waiting. They're waiting for more money to come in because there's so many people demanding more grants and more loans. So everybody's ready to give more money out. Right now, the source of money is not there. So number one, from the federal side, the funding that came a few months ago called PPP, that money is not available now because it's gone. We're waiting and hoping that Congress will do another batch of funding. So as you probably know, right now in Congress, there's a bill that's pending. House and Senate are very far apart. One's $3 trillion, the other's $1 trillion. So they're going to try to negotiate. And then the package will include possibly unemployment funding for the $600 extra that everybody was talking about. That money's gone as well. So hopefully that money will be in there. Some PPP, some other types of maybe payroll deduction and other taxes that are part of the conversation. So if Congress acts, that gives all of us more money that we can work off of. If Congress does not act, it'll be hard for us to come up with new money. So that's one, federal. Second, let's talk about the state and how does the state operate. State government generally doesn't have grants for businesses. We just don't. It's one of those things where it would be hard for the state government to say, here's a whole lot of money, we're just going to give it to business and see how it goes. Instead, what we have are policies and programs that incentivize certain kinds of businesses. For example, if you're in a business that creates, like say, renewable energy or coal mining industry back in the old days, or agriculture business or something like that, where the state says there's a particular need for this particular business, and if you go in this business, we'll give you a tax credit. So instead of giving you cash, if you make money, we just won't charge you for the profits that you made. We'll give you a credit towards the tax. So those are the kinds of things that we do at the state level. So we have incentives that are not direct cash payment, but indirect financial support after the fact. So those programs are there. The problem right now is that there's nothing that's specific to COVID. So just because your business is impacted by COVID doesn't mean that there's something on in our law right now that says, oh, here's a program perfect for you. We just don't have that. We never had that before. So at the state level, there isn't anything specific. What we do have, though, at the state level is we passed a law 3 or 4 years ago. We called it the Go Virginia Program, Go Virginia Program. And Go stands for Growth and Opportunity. So Go Virginia, Growth and Opportunity Virginia. Back in the old days, we had this thing called the Governor's Opportunity Fund. And we kind of changed it because we didn't want the governor to get all the credit, right? So we took the name governor out. We replaced it with Go Virginia, Growth and Opportunity Fund. And basically the idea is the state government working with private sector businesses, chambers of commerce, all of our key leaders at regions. So for example, here in Northern Virginia would be one region. Central Virginia is another region. Hampton Roads, Eastern Shore, Norfolk, Virginia Beach is another region, Southwest, rural areas, another region. So we divided the state into about 5 different regions. And what we said was within each of those regions, all the business leaders, local governments, bankers, investors, everybody should come together and come up with some ideas about what you want to fund in your area. What would be a good place for us to invest together so that it's not one person investing, but if you get everybody to invest together, that'll be a real game changer. How do we encourage more partnerships and collaboration? So the Go Virginia Fund basically says the state will provide some funding if all of you can agree on one thing. Then we'll come in as a partner. And so that's how we've been doing it. About 2 or 3 days ago, the governor announced a grant that he's giving to, unfortunately, it wasn't Northern Virginia, but to a region that's looking at how do we deal with some COVID-related relief, right? So some technology to address COVID, maybe some of the testing issues. So the governor's team is looking at that as a way to say, can we use some Go Virginia funds to help local areas dealing with COVID? So that's one other area that we're doing at the state level. And then finally, I'll just make this really short. The county itself, Fairfax County, Arlington County, Loudoun County, each county has their own economic development programs, their own money and their own programs that say, how do we encourage companies to come to Loudoun? For example, if you're an IT business down on Dulles Corridor and you want to come and build a data center in Ashland or something like that, how do we encourage you to come there instead of going to another place? So there's some funding that they have for that. That's not directly related to COVID, but those are some of the tools that are already in the books. So bottom line, simple conclusion is new money right now, there's none. Unless Congress gives us money, there won't be any new money. Existing program, state has a couple of them. It's not quite perfect for COVID, but the governor is trying his best, and we're all trying our best to see if there might be something that we can use within an existing program that helps COVID-related projects. At the county level, it really comes down to, can the county afford to come up with a money or a program that incentivizes a particular business? Usually that money is given to companies coming to Virginia from somewhere else, not necessarily an existing business in Virginia. But right now, nobody's moving, right? Nobody's traveling. And so maybe we can try to reallocate some of that funding for local businesses.
Okay. So coming back to the question, see, PPP program, even I participated in it, but I was not able to get the program. I was not able to benefit through that program. So Is there any team where we can go back to the team and see whether they can help and support people like me or folks like entrepreneurs like me so that they can get some information further and get some details?
There's unfortunately there's nothing that's like an easy place to go because PPP is such a new program. It is so brand new, only 3 months old, 4 months old. And when Congress passed that law to create the PPP program, they did it so quickly and frankly, they did a really bad job of putting it together because they just said, it's so urgent, we got to get money out, let's send $1 trillion out there. And they never really sat down to figure out exactly who qualifies, who doesn't qualify, what the conditions are. They said something like, if you keep your employees, then maybe we'll forgive the loan later on. But they never said exactly how they're going to forgive it. So right now it's a loan, but loan can turn into a grant at some point when they meet a certain condition. But they never actually specifically said that. And the banks, if you're a big bank like Wells Fargo or Merrill Lynch or Bank of America, you're not going to have mom and pop businesses. You're going to have big corporations, Fortune 500s as your clients. So when they got the money, they said, we're not going to look for, mom and pop. We're not going to look for Dr. Jane's small business. We're going to go for the big corporations. So a lot of the money went to the big corporations because that was a relationship that they had. And then the small banks, like the very small community banks, they didn't even get some of the money. So they said, we have people that we can give money to. But a lot of the money ended up going to the big banks. And so there was a lot of unfairness in that implementation. I'm hoping that Congress has learned its lesson, and there's certainly been a lot of criticism about their program. So what I'm hoping is that when they do another round of money, soon, that they'll come up with new rules, new conditions, earmark it for small business, not big businesses. I mean, if you're $1 billion corporation, do you need help from the government? You shouldn't, but they are getting the money too, right? So we got to find a way to ensure that the money goes to the right groups.
So yeah, thank you, Mark. So the next question follows. Our second question from Northern Virginia residents. We heard of the Rebuild VA program about. Please elaborate. Will your offices assist us to facilitate? Who can we contact? What can we expect? This will be of a great help to the community. And we have several folks reach us, repeat questions from professionals, tech entrepreneurs, small business owners, and residents.
Which program was it? Rebuild?
Rebuild VA program.
Rebuild VA, yeah. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that one because that's the governor's program. I can't remember exactly when. I mean, he announced it a while back, but I'll do it this way to make it easy for you. I will get you the contact person in the governor's team. I'm a little bit familiar with it, but not very much because it's a brand new thing that the governor's team has put together. So let me find some information. I'll send it to somebody, and then you can share it with your members. But if you just want to go online, it's governor.virginia.gov, and then if you look up governor.virginia.gov/rebuildva or backslash, I guess, and that's where the thing is. But let me put it this way: next Tuesday, we're going to be back in Richmond. And the first thing we have Tuesday when we go down there is at 9:30 a.m. We're meeting with the governor and his Secretary of Treasury and their team. We're going to be going through all of the budget situation, like how much do we have now, how much do we need to spend, where is the revenue coming from. So we're going to have that conversation at 9:30, and then at 12 noon we go into session that day. So starting on, I guess, Tuesday morning, I'm going to be with the governor and his team, and so we'll get you a lot of this information that I just don't have access to right now because the governor's team has that. So I'll get to you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegate. Moving to our next question. And this is our third, student community. Simply put, they are highly confused. And as parents, we are wholly concerned too. So the big question, will students who graduated in 2020 be eligible to apply for unemployment benefits? What or how can we help them?
Well, first of all, I'm a parent myself. I have a son who graduated from high school 2 months ago. Of course, it doesn't feel like he graduated because there was no ceremony. He didn't get to wear his cap and gown. And even though he got a diploma, it wasn't through a program. So it feels like we didn't have the graduation. He's going to go to college in a week or so. My daughter, who's just going to be a senior in high school herself, she's going to move up. she's also very worried because her school's starting virtually, as most of us in Northern Virginia know. Our schools are all starting virtually. So she's really missing her friends. She wanted to hang out. Senior year in high school is supposed to be the best year of your life. You know, all the fun things, prom and homecoming. She's going to miss out on a lot of that. So she's very sad about it. And so whether you're graduating high school or college or graduate school, right now is probably the worst time to be going through a major transition like that, because a lot of young people want to go out and live on their own, get their jobs and be independent. Now, many of them are coming back to their parents' home and saying, I'm sorry, I have no place else to go. I don't have a job. And of course, parents themselves are struggling right now too, with some of us that don't have jobs. So this is a very, very bad time, especially for young people who's just starting their career path. So the bad news on that front is the unemployment program at the state level is not designed for people who just came out of school. It's designed for people that were already in the working world, lost their job, because it's technically it's unemployment insurance. All right, so it's an insurance program. So you have to pay into the insurance program before you can benefit from that. But so if you've never worked before, you never participated in an insurance program. So it's not fair for somebody who's never worked to say, let me get some benefits, even though I never contributed to that, right? It's like any kind of insurance where if you never paid premiums, you can't just go in and say, hey, I want my insurance benefits. So that's one of the reasons unemployment is not a good thing for that age. But what is a good news? So that's bad news. The good news is that because they're going through this phase, this weird, very strange phase at the exact same time that everybody else is going through it, it's not like just because I don't have a job as a recent graduate that somebody else is already working. Everybody else is in the same boat, right? So just because one person feels like I'm frustrated, I'm not able to get my job, I can't move out, you're not the only person. And everybody in the entire world, class of 2020, maybe class of 2021, that generation will be suffering together, but they're also going to be succeeding together when this is all over, because they're going through a tremendous amount of challenges. And as you know, most people don't grow professionally, socially, personally, unless they face some tremendous adversity. That's why our generation, our parents' generation, have been more successful, because they've gone through, you know, whether it's in India and Korea or wherever, they've gone through a lot of struggles, including wars and revolutions and independences, and they've come out on the other end as a stronger people, stronger individuals. I think that's what's going to happen with the class of 2020, because they've lost so much and they've felt adversity at such a young age. They're going to be more resilient, stronger people in the future. And that class, the 2020 class, I think will be able to try to catch up what they missed out by being even more successful than the ones that came before or after them. At least that's what I tell my kids.
Thank you. And we hope they will be okay. Our bright and brilliant kids, they deserve the great future. I agree with you, Honorable Delegate. So this is our fifth question. Is there a possibility to adjust or lower loans, reduce or forego interest or loans? Anything towards student loans, in particular to alleviate their concerns? Loan forgiveness, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a very important and timely question. Let's try to break this down into a few different categories. The biggest loan that most Americans have is mortgage. And some people have car loans, of course, but car loans, dollar-wise, is not as big in terms of the big picture, unless you're driving a $100,000 car, which I don't know anybody that does that, but my car is worth $8,000, so I don't have to worry about that. But most people, car payments and car loans, if it's too much, they can just sell it back or repossess. It's not the biggest deal in the world. But if you're living in a house and your 30-year mortgage is unaffordable, that's a bigger problem, because if a bank comes and takes your home away, where are you going to go? So for most people, mortgage is going to be the biggest loan that they have to face, and the most traumatic one in terms of the impact. The good part of that right now is because COVID has hit so badly across the country, all the banks, the major banks, understand people are going to be defaulting on their payments. So there are two things that we would suggest. One is, if you can, call your mortgage company, the bank, and let them know, hey, listen, I'm like everybody else. I can't pay my loans right now. I've just lost my job. I have all kinds of problems right now. The last thing I can do is come up with money for my payments. So can I just not pay for the next 2 months, 3 months? Most banks are saying, yeah, that's absolutely fine, because we understand. We all understand what's going on. And in exchange, what they'll say is, we're not going to forgive that money, obviously, because they're in the business. We'll just add it to the very, very end, so that if it's a 30-year mortgage and you paid 15 years and you have 15 years left, now it's 15 years plus 3 months, 4 months, 5 months at the end. And so it just keeps adding at the end, instead of saying you got to pay it now. So hopefully there won't be a balloon payment. You say, you missed 3 months, now you're going to give me 3 months right now. That shouldn't happen. They should just add it to the end so that it becomes part of the principle that's outstanding. The second thing you should do is, if you can't negotiate directly and talk to the bank and say, hey, can you work it out with me? If you can't do that, we do have some relief. And the first thing that we did at the state level was working with the federal government. There was a fund of money that came in from the federal government. And in Virginia, we received, I think, like around $50 million or so. So we received some money from the federal government that says this is to allow for you to help with low-income rent, mortgage, people that are having housing problems. Let's try to help them. So we use that money towards that. So a lot of people that were in that same situation where, help, I can't do anything, I can't pay my mortgage, and my bank isn't helping me, we're able to help them through a program using the federal funds. But just like what we talked about with unemployment and PPP, federal money's gone now. And so there's no more federal funding. So we can't come up with new money for that. So that's one thing we're going to do starting next week when we go back into General Assembly. Housing fund to allow for low-income people to continue to be able to pay their mortgage while they're in this problem. We're going to work on that, and we'll come up with some money for that. But in addition to that, though, in addition to whatever money we can come up with, the real problem that we're facing is that a lot of people who are unable to pay for their mortgage or their home, they're worried that they might get kicked out and end up homeless. That would be the worst thing that happens. So right now, the Virginia State Supreme Court has said nobody, a landlord, right, landlord or a homeowner, no bank can foreclose or evict somebody until September 7th. Originally, it was till July, and then we extended it to September 7th. So for the next 6 weeks or so, nobody should be able to get kicked out on their own. Well, the courts have said don't do anything until then. That gives us, the General Assembly, time to change the laws and come up with some new policies. So if you're facing a loan problem right now, when it comes to housing, we are definitely working on that. Outside of housing, whether it's a school loan, job, some other kind of loan, a car loan, every single one of them is different. There's no state program that's designed for that. What I would recommend is you call the owner of that loan, the bank or whoever the title holder, and say, listen, under COVID, I just can't pay this. Can you just defer this payment? Add it to the end of the line so that it adds to the principal. And 90% of the banks right now are doing that. They're all trying to help each other out.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. And there is a fourth question I missed. Let me go back to that one. The fourth question also centers around youth and students. At Lead America, we say youth are our future. Our future is youth, as they are all about your future and our future. So what is the predictor environment for 2021, and what programs are available for students to join or pursue such programs? Honorable Delegate, can you please give us some hope? We look up to you as a leader who drives solutions.
Well, first of all, I hate to disappoint you, but I'm not that much of a leader. I'm just going to do my part the best I can. I'll tell you that for young people, that's especially at my kid's age and maybe your kid's age and others who are just starting out their careers now or just starting their high school or college experiences. No question, this is a tough time. No question, this is a very, very tough time for all of us, and for them in particular. It's sad that at such a young age they have to face this reality that the world is such a dangerous place and such an uncertain place. But as I was alluding to a little bit earlier, I do believe that this is building resilience and strength in a young generation that, frankly, if it wasn't for this, I don't know what other adversity they would be facing, right? Because even though we've had a war for 20 years now in Iraq and Afghanistan, most of the young people today may end up not going to the military. I mean, they may be doing other things. And other than major urgent things like climate change and a few other major problems in America, there's nothing that's like a really devastating thing. And the reason I say this is, if you think back 20 years ago, 19 years ago, on 9/11 of September 11th of 2001, that was a traumatic experience for many of us. I was on Capitol Hill at the time working for a U.S. senator, and I was in the Capitol when that happened. My kids were not born at the time, so they don't have any memories of 9/11. But the young people at that age, when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, even the ones that were in high school, they grew up understanding that this world is a very dangerous place and that you have to be suspicious and that we have enemies that don't like America. And regardless of what the origin is of the terrorism, whether it's from the Taliban or from that particular area, they don't look at it as this isn't about Muslims versus Christians. This isn't about Middle East versus West. It's about the fact that there are people who, for whatever reason, don't like Western liberties and freedoms. So we, being Americans with the privilege of freedom that we have, we can't take it for granted. And let's try to work towards peace in the world so that we reach out to our Muslim brothers and sisters. We reach out to those countries where they don't have as much freedom, whether it's Hong Kong or Taiwan, Singapore, other places, and we want to make sure that everybody can enjoy democracy together. So that generation, what we call the millennials, who went through 9/11, saw it in their own eyes, grew up thinking, I got to think beyond my own community. I got to think beyond my own neighborhoods. I have to think globally about how do I change life. So a lot of them went into foreign services. A lot of them went into things like, not the Peace Corps directly, but programs that are NGOs, going overseas, building relationships with other countries, learning other languages. That's something that happened as a result of witnessing 9/11. And then you go back 20 years before that, the generation that grew up with the civil rights movement. We just lost John Lewis recently, but the people that saw the 60s civil rights era, they understood how racial tensions led to an imperfect America. And they worked really hard to make sure that blacks got Voting Rights Act, the immigration rights, the civil rights laws. And so they never took for granted that the government can beat you up if they don't like your color of your skin. Now, unfortunately, we're repeating that now in this generation. But that generation also became activists, and John F. Kennedy and others encouraged them to get into government and public service and build a better world. So every generation that goes through a major adversity, that's not an individual adversity, but a collective, community, society-based, collective adversity, ends up doing something together as a community. I think this is an opportunity in some ways, as tragic and difficult as it is. It's an opportunity for young people to say, I don't want to go back to the world that my parents grew up in. That wasn't the most perfect world. There was discrimination, there was racism, there's tensions, there's gender-based biases, there's religious biases, LGBTQ bias. I don't want to live in that world. Post-COVID, when we're done with COVID, when we come back to the new normal after COVID, I want to live in a world where we treat each other better. We don't treat each other based on discriminatory issues. And more importantly, I want to live in a world where healthcare is a primary goal. So my generation, older generation, we never thought about healthcare. I mean, most of us as immigrants, we say, I can't afford insurance. I have to work. I can't call in sick. I have to show up and work because my kids depend on me. So my parents, me, our generation, we say healthcare is not that important. If I can afford insurance, I'll get it. If not, I'll just keep working. I'll work through my cold. I'll work through my pain. I'll work through my cancer because I have to feed my kids. Well, this generation is growing up saying, if a pandemic can kill people, if a pandemic can shut down businesses, we better damn well make sure that healthcare is a universal right, that we better demand that America provides healthcare to every single person. And if they can't afford it, it has to be government programs. So Medicare for all, the idea that we should have healthcare as a universal human right, I think that's going to drive a whole generation demanding different things from our society. And in that way, there are going to be job opportunities in healthcare, job opportunities in clean energy, renewable energy that's not dependent on carbon and climate crisis causing pollution. So young people growing up today facing this as their collective adversity, as their generation's calling card, will be the ones that provide solutions to long age-old problems that we couldn't solve ourselves.
So thank you. And we understand that you truly understand our ground realities. Entire families are affected. Your comment brings us back to the health of our community. Our sixth question. In Commonwealth of Virginia, particularly as a Fairfax resident, should we worry about the growing COVID numbers with everything opening up? Though there is a social distancing, how soon or how late will be better off?
Well, that's the one question that nobody knows the answer to, right? But I can give you the best answer I know now as of today. So Virginia is, compared to a lot of other states, we have done much better. So it's not good news. It's nothing to celebrate. We just want ahead of other states. And so let's take some relief in knowing that it could have been much worse in Virginia, but fortunately we didn't have it as bad, both in terms of the healthcare problem as well as the economic problem. We didn't have it as bad as other states. On the healthcare side, one of the reasons why we were able to, for a while there was April, no question, it was really bad. May, it was pretty bad. But by June, things started going down. And then we reopened phase 3 in July. And since then, it's been pretty steady. So Northern Virginia in particular, we had an early spike in April and May, and then it went down and it stayed flat since then. But other parts of Virginia, it's actually gone the opposite. So, for example, in Hampton Roads, for a while it was okay, spiked, came down, and spiked again. Now it's still spiking. So, Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake, Suffolk area, very, very bad right now. The governor even had to go back and change some of the rules for that area. Central Virginia, Richmond area, it's not very good. It's going up right now again. Rural areas, for the time that we had the spike in Northern Virginia, they had nothing. And then now that ours went down, theirs is going up now in rural areas. So
Yeah.
entire Virginia is a little bit different for us in Virginia, in Northern Virginia, and I'll keep this very short. In Northern Virginia, I would say as long as we're doing exactly what we're doing, social distancing, personal hygiene, wearing masks at all times, limiting the outdoors to, I mean, the governor says 250 people, but I would say 50 people. Not even that. I mean, the smaller the better. Spend more time outdoors. Don't go inside. Restaurants and bars, that's really a bad place. Big churches and synagogues and temples, those are places where it's dangerous because you're indoors with lots of people. Try to limit those exposure, and I think we should be a lot better than where we are now. And the final point on this, unless and until there's a vaccine, I don't think that we should say, oh, things are getting better, so we should relieve ourselves. Now, that's the reason why the schools didn't open this year, right? I mean, as much as I want my daughter to go back to school, as much as all of us want our kids to go back to school, we think that would create that spike that we've been able to reduce in Northern Virginia. So hang tight, 6 more months, easily 6 more months before we have a vaccine. So I don't think that we should assume anything's going to change anytime soon. Keep doing what we're doing, be patient, and let's keep working towards a solution.
And that concludes our final question here. So with this, we request your concluding remarks and thank you for your time, presence, service, and engagement. Fairfax, being a business hub, is hit badly due to COVID. Is the county considering to lower the county taxes, or will they still be the same for both personal and property? Also, what about the VA state? Can we expect a break? Again, we greatly appreciate your time and we wish you a very best.
I have a.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
yes, sir.
No, go ahead. Finish.
Well, no, I was going to say, yeah, I'll keep this answer really short, and then I'd love to hear from Dr. Jane, because you're the one that made this all happen tonight. And Siri, of course, thank you for what you've just done. The simple answer to the tax question is that we are not going to do anything very, very soon to change our tax laws, either at the state or at the county level, not until next year, not January or February. And the reason is because the crisis that we have right now, as bad as it is for all of us as individuals, as homeowners, as families, as businesses, it's also really bad for the state. The state itself is having a lot of problems. We've been asked to pay so many things, businesses, unemployment, healthcare, buying PPEs and masks for all of our healthcare workers, propping up industries that are failing, making sure that our schools have all they need. So the government is spending a lot of money right now. And the only way the government can spend that money is if the government gets money. And the only way we get money is the tax people. So right now, taxes are what's keeping all these programs going. So if you were to say, let's reduce taxes to help the individuals, what we're saying is, let's also cut all these other programs, including healthcare, loans, and business grants, and all that stuff. So unfortunately, this is not the time for us to be changing the tax laws at the time when the government needs the taxes the most. Next year, when we get to a legislative session next year, I think we will take up some tax. And one of the things that you have to remember, number-wise, our state, at the Virginia state level, 70% of our tax, the income that the state has, 70% of the income that comes into our state comes from individual taxes, like you and me as individuals. We pay our income taxes. So 70% of the money to the state comes from individuals like you and I. There are 8.5 billion Virginians, about 2.5 million that actually work. We're the ones that are paying for all these programs. The businesses pay 5% of the entire state's tax. So individuals pay 70%, corporations pay only 5%. Rest of the 17, 18% in between comes from sales taxes. So, when you buy a car, when you go buy groceries or food or a pair of shoes, that's the money that you spend. So we have to figure out a way to reduce the tax burden on individuals, maybe increase the taxes on corporations because they're only paying 5%, and maybe find other revenue sources, not just sales, not just income, something else, because otherwise we're constantly be asking you and I to pay more taxes when we really should be thinking about different sources of funding. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, Delegate Mark, one quick question. And actually, first of all, I want to thank the audience for, I know there are many more questions. And if there are some key ones, then we will email them to you. So with that appeal, I wanted to make an appeal to everyone in the audience and in the television world is to please sign into Delegate Keam's website. So you'll get a continuous up-to-date information. I learn a lot. On a day-to-day, there's almost a new posting. Second, I want to put in a plug that Delegate Keam can use our support in every way with campaign in terms of helping with the campaign strategies. Any way we can volunteer. We got out of expert right here. Mark, many of our people in audience are from the area that we're in, Fairfax County, McLean, Tyson's Corner areas. So they're our beneficiaries from our district. The second thing, so I want to really appeal to everyone to sign up for the e-newsletter on Delegate Keam's website and definitely support him. And another urge that from many businessmen in our area would like to do a trade, international trade. And I think we very briefly talked about it, that once the COVID situation kind of uplifts and there is a free travel, we perhaps want to take a delegation to India to look for Northern Virginia business, inviting the manufacturing opportunities here, as well as we take our businesses for development to other parts of the world, especially in India. So we'd love to work with you on that, and I'm glad to know that we have a set aside funds to help support those kind of activities. So we look forward to exploring that with you. So if you want to make any comments, I know you have experience in this matter.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Jain, and I appreciate you saying that. And obviously, it's an honor for me to serve with you in any way I can to help both our business and our families do the best they can. On the business issue, as far as international trade, there's been some really positive development over the last few years in Virginia. I mean, Virginia has always been one of our leading states in the country when it comes to business opportunities overseas. The problem is from my perspective, we're on the wrong coast, right? Because Asia is closer to the Pacific Ocean than it is the Atlantic Ocean. So it's a little bit harder for Virginia to do business in Asia. It's easier for Virginia to do business with Europe than it is to do business on the other side of the globe. But with the modern technology, it doesn't really matter how close you are. You obviously can do business anywhere. And so over the last 10, 15 years or so, Virginia has really focused on doing more business with Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia as well. I know Governor Kane, Governor Warner and others have been to India. My guess, I can't remember if Governor McCall probably has. But anyway, so we've had several governors and their delegations go to South Asia and East Asia as well. One of the good news that came out of this administration, Governor Northam's administration, over the last 2 years is that they actually, for the first time, to my knowledge, the first time they came up with an international trade plan, an actual plan, a blueprint. And they hired a new woman who happens to be a good friend of mine to be the vice president for international trade within the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. That's the office that does all of the global and international business attraction. They were the ones that brought Amazon headquarters to Virginia. So they know what they're doing. They hired a woman to be like the point person on international trade, somebody who's never really been that focused on international trade. As a result of her and the team coming together, over the last 2 years, we've had really big success with Virginia companies going overseas. So our export numbers have gone up tremendously. So at least one side of that ledger is working, right? Virginia is selling our products overseas. Now, how do we bring those businesses into Virginia? That's the other side of the ledger. And I think that I've always said, India in particular, but any part of Asia is a golden opportunity for us to do more business with, because we have a lot of Asian Americans that live here that have connections. And also in terms of the economic growth between Europe, Africa, South America, and Central America, and obviously with Asia, if you compare those markets, Asia is the target for us. That's the place where we can have tremendous growth, especially the kind of work that we want to do. The agriculture industry, the IT industry, the technology, trade. We have a really good, strong partnership. So if we leverage our connections and your network and all of our networks, I think Virginia has a very bright future with business with Asia. I look forward to working with all of your partners to see if that can be done.
Right. One of the organizations that's our co-sponsor for this event and events like this is the International Trade Organization, and they have a 27 countries presence, and these are all leading businessmen. And many of them are close to multi-billionaire and millionaires around the globe. So I think it'll be a great opportunity for us to create that partnership and seek a mutual interest. But with that, I really want to thank again Siri for being our sort of an MC, and Srini Grekapati, who's a social media expert. He knows anything and everything. If you have any issues whatsoever, he's the man to go to, and he's been very, very instrumental. One of the leading successful businessmen in India, as well as in our Tyson's Corner area. I mean, Tyson's Corner area in Northern Virginia. Another, and there are delegate. There are many volunteers who are doing lots of work behind the scene. So I want to take this opportunity and thank all the volunteers of Lead America who are doing a lot of charitable work, small work, to animal welfare, to feeding the hungry, to the mask distribution, plant distribution, hobby, etc., etc. I'd love to write to you and tell you about all the things they're doing, so we can have perhaps some sort of a recognition for them at a state level. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And with this, I'd like to request perhaps a follow-up call in October, November with all of us, and of course with our television media. And I'm sure Srini Grekapati will arrange, just like he did a wonderful job in arranging this one. Rajesh Gutti is a good friend of mine. He's behind the scene. He's actually both being in this call as well as monitoring our television activities. So he's our silent hero, or hero without a title. He deserves every title, but he prefers to work behind the scene to make sure everything goes as perfect as we can. So thank you, Delegate Keam. We've taken away more than our fair share of time. Please thank your family and our volunteers for doing this again and again, a selfless service to our Virginians. Thank you very much.
It's an honor. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
For spirited help and contribute their time, talent, and treasure. And until then, until our next seminar, digital seminar, Dhanyavad, and thank you for your gracious support. Shubhratri.
Thanks, Eddie. Wonderful job. Thank you.